Great to be with you all here again. I'm Steve McCrystal, as I'm the Chief Enterprise Technology Officer at Unilever. That kind of covers a little bit of what we would sort of our GBS capability, which is anything from all the supply chain operations that we run, finance, HR, information and analytics, to obviously our entire technology state. Just a little bit of a numbers page here for you to connect with the complexity and give you a sense of the scale that we face at Unilever. We operate in about 190 countries around the world. We have over 400 brands, 12 of them billion euro brands, and 14 of the top 50 brands in the world. For some of our brands, one in 3 people use our products every single day. And as our head of marketing and sales likes to say, that means that the opportunity is to go after the other 2 of 3 that aren't using it, but really quite significant. Like most others, COVID has brought interesting challenges. So probably before I get started, we want to just mention that we delivered in our last trading update in Q3 a little over 4% growth, which is a good number for us, top line. And it's an interesting number because the reality is underneath that, you'll have segments of our business that are absolutely flying because maybe they do personal care, hand cleansing, sanitation, et cetera. And you'll have other parts of our business which support the restaurant industry or out-of-home consumption of ice cream, et cetera, which are actually under severe pressure. So while on one hand, it sort of looks like at the top level, things are going relatively well, the amount of paddling underneath the water is really tremendous. And adapting our supply chain in that time has become really quite a significant challenge for us. So let me try to maybe share a little bit about, hopefully this will work to move my slide along. Let's see. Let me try to bring to life a little bit around kind of how we've been thinking about transforming ourselves. It starts with this phrase of being purpose-led. If you know Unilever, if you look at us at all from an external lens, you'll know that we feel quite committed to purpose. And we have set up some very audacious goals, be it around carbon, around plastics, or deforestation for palm. We're very, very focused and purpose-led as a company. And my job is really to make sure that the operational capabilities underneath that are future fit. We like to say battle ready quite frequently as well, too. We've got kind of 3 big goals. One is sort of creating edge-to-edge experiences. We like to use that phrase because we really are shifting the game to experience, and I'll come to that in a moment. Enabling business growth, which is really through unlocking capacity, driving digital automation. Over the last year, we've created 1.5 million hours of productivity from our automation agenda. And data as a platform is becoming a critical focus for us. And this is connecting all elements of data, and I'll come on to that as well because it's a critical a goal for us. And lastly, we need to always create fuel for the business to keep reinvesting, fuel to reinvest in things like carbon improvements and plastic. And so our relatively short-term goal is to deliver $1 billion in value as fuel for growth based on these capabilities. What I would say is that to make this happen, we have some shifts going on. One is this kind of ultimate stakeholder view of the world that we're going for and creating experiences around this. We've allocated, sort of 4 kind of key stakeholder groups: customer, employee, consumer, and commercial. So bear in mind, we're an FMCG company. So mostly we sell to the retail trade, which is our customer, and then consumers will buy our products in the retail trade. So we distinguish consumer and customer very much. When we talk about this, we talk about, shifting towards the ultimate stakeholder. And I would say, actually, in many ways, it's not maybe so new for people to think about putting customer at the center of what you do, or consumer in our world, or employee. The reality is when you get into the details of that, it's actually much harder than you think, because certainly for us as an organization, we've done an incredibly good job of man-marking the rest of the organization. And what I mean by that is we've been incredibly functionally oriented. And that functional orientation creates silos. And the trouble that we run into is if we're trying to deliver an outcome for a customer, you have to cut across those silos to deliver real outcomes. So from an experience point of view, heavily focused on how we transform the retail customer experience by breaking down capabilities that happen in sales, supply chain, logistics, customer service. You do that through integrated operations, and you do that through integrated data. It would be the same for any of our other experiences, be it the employee, where we want to completely simplify and integrate the moments that matter. So we have one interface, one experience for them. It would be the same for consumer and for also our, what we call commercial, which is predominantly our supplier. How do we manage our suppliers more holistically? All of this is underpinned by a dramatic technology transformation that we've been on. We've had a full transformation of our network. And also we are on a very aggressive cloud strategy. Over the next 18 months, we'll have no more on-premise technology. We'll be completely cloud. We're probably at about 45% there today. We leverage Microsoft and Google predominantly for this. So we will continue that journey. We have been on an incredible path on data as a platform for quite some time now. And really what we're trying to do now is figure out how do we integrate all of that, integrating consumer, integrating customer data together, integrating that with our supply chain and financial data so that the insights can really make us a true sort of power player. And that's kind of what we're working towards. I would also say partner ecosystem has been quite critical for us. I think the reality is we have fantastic technology partners that we work with every day. We're very choiceful in that, and we have very strong relationships. And as we expose some of the key challenges that we face, particularly when it is our external facing sustainability goals, we find our technology providers just want to get stuck in. They really get engaged, and we get so much more from them when they're aligned on the purpose that we have. And so when I'm evaluating new suppliers to work with, we have a big purpose conversation first. Because if I can get alignment there, I'm going to get the most out of that team. And so we spend time on that as well. I think for us also, probably the last point that this is all underpinned by is really reframing, what it means, what do we require as capabilities, and making ourselves battle ready. A big challenge for us. And so we've been working really hard on how do we use this kind of COVID time to really retrench our capabilities and our skills so we can deliver against this agenda. So big opportunities. As I said, we'll deliver more than $1 billion in value by doing this, and really excited to do that. We'll also, I think, hopefully completely transform how we operate. But it doesn't come without some significant challenges and maybe a bit of learnings. So maybe if I just share a few points with you, and that'll maybe spark a little bit of conversation. I mentioned at the beginning on the question, our ability to really embrace Agile, because certainly the clock speed has changed. If you're like me, you're kind of bouncing from either a Zoom or Teams call with very little room to spare, and the pace on making decisions becomes quite critical. I think choosing KPIs is super critical. Knowing your customer needs becomes, I think, one of the most important things that we do, and creating unifying metrics around that. I'll be honest with you, we learned a little bit of this from Amazon. I was doing some supply chain evaluation work with Amazon, which they have obviously one of the most impressive supply chains around the world. And I talked to 4 different development groups within their team, and each of them had the ability to meet the customer promise date on the delivery as their core unifying measure. And it was a really fascinating conversation, because every time you asked them how they prioritize or why they did this, we kept coming back to, remember, it's all about hitting that date. And that unifying metric focus, I thought, was brilliant. So we've been trying to embed that in all of our key experience areas. What's the unifying metric that you can focus and prioritize around to deliver? So I think that becomes great. I think, look, the other thing is, as I said, the more you go integrated, you're cutting across functional boundaries. Your customers don't see the functional boundaries in your business. Your customers see the outcomes. And so in order to deliver those outcomes, you need to break down those functional silos, and that's not easy because those run deep. So you have to really make sure you have everybody focused on delivering the outcome for the stakeholder group. And then lastly, I would just say, I like to say, know thyself. Know where your strengths are and know where you need to partner. We've got pockets within our team, I can tell you, where we think we have more skill than we do. We have pockets within our team where we really are, I think, differentiating. And spending your time thinking about that, and then seeing where the gaps are, being honest with yourself on that, and partner wisely, because there's lots of capability out there. And if you can align them on purpose, I think you can make really good progress there. So we're on the journey here, lots more to deliver. reshaping from a kind of what I would say almost as a vertical view of the world, stovepipe by pillars, going more horizontal. So that effect going more horizontal means outcomes that deliver for big stakeholders. And if we get that right, we think there's huge amounts of value for the company to unlock. Okay, Adam?
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Steve. Much appreciated, sir. So I've made sort of a couple of, well, quite a lengthy list of notes there. But I just wanted to start, if I may, to kind of, I guess, to sort of revisit the journey. You said you're 45% towards cloud, you're doing all this sort of stuff. It sounds amazing. You've clearly got momentum and you've got stakeholders and everything behind you. If I can ask you to just sort of rewind to when that began, was it start small, prove it out, grow it up? And in which case, how did you start? Where did you start with Unilever?
Well, the thing is, this is why I think it's so critical to think about outcomes. And so when you're in a role like we all play, be it technology or operations focused, you're constantly thinking about what impact can you have to transform. And so for me, that means we have to be super close to the outcomes we're trying to create as a business. And so probably about probably about a year and a half ago, I just started to look at what are the key measures? What do our customers say about us? We're going in a world from a consumer point of view where mass marketing was everything, and now we need to personalize. What are our consumers saying about us? And really, really hold the mirror up and be candid in the assessment of that. And candidly for us, we were falling backwards on our ultimate customer service measures. So I started to use that as a North Star to say, guys, we're never going to win long term if this is how our customers perceive us. And so with that as the backdrop and that as the ultimate outcome, we said, okay, we need to rethink. We need to think about things a little bit differently. We're falling down by having great functional measures, but I don't have the outcomes that the customer is feeling. And so we use that as a catalyst. Now, in some ways, we have started maybe, as you say, a little bit in pilot mode in a few places, and we've just jumped on any sort of early successes and really amplified those, but with a touch of humility, because nothing ever goes perfect. So you need to keep the humility going. So with a touch of humility, we've sort of latched onto early successes. And now I would say truly we have the whole company behind the transformation that we're on right now. So if you keep the customer outcomes front and center, it becomes hard to debate what you're trying to achieve.
And what to do, you talked about choosing your partners well and all that sort of stuff. What about those internal partnerships? Because I know that there was a big focus on data, and you said, I think, forgive me if I've mistyped, but data as a platform can be the unlock, was one of your kind of pullbacks at the end there. So you've got these deep silos which are product-based, so they must run deep in the muscle memory of the company. You're trying to pull out data to kind of break those down, et cetera, et cetera. But data feels to me like it doesn't necessarily, particularly within something like Unilever, which must be a very marketing-focused company, I would assume that the use of data doesn't particularly sit within technology. The finding of it and everything does. So what does that internal partnership look like? Where were you going to the marketing people and saying, I can find this for you, I can find this for you, but how do you need it? What makes it actionable? What makes it useful?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. It's something that we struggle with. This is one of those measures that you hate to say about yourself, right? But I think if I look at the work we do in our Azure estate today, which has the big bulk of our customer data, I think we're in one of the top 3 in the world in terms of the size of that, which again is not necessarily a great list to be on because you can have proliferation, right? So we have to guard against that a little bit. But we have really quite a significant estate. And we built, but our starting point was to sort of build that by connecting with our functional team. So connecting with our supply chain team or we call it CD, which is our sales team, our customer development team, or our finance team, et cetera. We created these sort of business data lake views for them, which were super insightful. I mean, loads of fantastic information comes. And then what happens is we have a marketing area where we've got all this consumer insight data. We've got a customer area that has all this rich retailer information in it. And then we have to go and sit with a Walmart or sit with a small mom and pop shop in India and try to expose to them insights that are going to help them. And what they actually want is not just the customer insight because they're a customer. They want to link to the consumer insights. And we have that information. It just doesn't stitch together well with the customer information we have. So now we're taking a refreshed look to say it's data as a platform that creates platform implications and platform connections across consumer, customer, financial, supply chain. And if we don't get that layer right, we won't be able to expose the insights that we need. So that's the big journey we're on now, is to say, look, I have all the silos, I have all the pockets. Now how do I stitch across? But again, if you just got to go back to using what are your customers demanding of you? And that becomes the impetus for that change.
I mean, that's a really interesting point, isn't it? That, you know, that you're right. In order to be of more value to your customer, you need to provide all the information you have about their customers. And if you can do that, and I guess when you're looking for partners, it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? If they can come in and not just sell you a widget, but sell you the educational process that goes around it, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the reality is it's fascinating because there are so many blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. So if I go into my retail customer trade, they know exactly what's happening in the shop. They're really clear on that. They don't know what's happening online. They don't know what's happening on social selling. There's these blind spots that they have that if they brought those elements together would make them win. And if you start making your customer win, I think you're onto a good formula there, right? Because then you get the partnership that you really want.